Very good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Atin Handuja, welcome you to the second session of Justice MDM International Workshop on ADR. So today we have our session on the topic construction arbitration, saving time and cost, how to file an arbitration case, non-contractual claims in commercial arbitration. Today our guest speaker is Mr. Mrityunjay Kumar, International Dispute Resolution Lawyer. I welcome you to the session, sir. So, am I audible? Yes, sir.
Sorry.
So, we'll start the session now. Harshvi, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Am I audible? A very good afternoon, sir. So we would like to begin with our session. Firstly, I would like to thank you to be a part of our. Firstly, I would like to thank you to be a part of this session. So now, I would like to ask you, sir, what is construction arbitration and its scope in India?
Has a huge range, like from building one house, like constructing one house till mega project. So earlier it was not that much scope in India, but nowadays being influenced by the other countries, the construction disputes are getting traction. Like in other countries, like in UK and Malaysia, they have a specific law to adjudicate the construction dispute specifically. But in India, it's not there still. Arbitration as usual, like every contract has an arbitration clause nowadays because due to the
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. Your voice is breaking.
after the completion of the project. So it is after very long time period.
So your voice is breaking.
So during those time period, hello.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, but your voice is breaking.
Yeah, that's happening with me as well because you guys are also like breaking. That's what I told you initially. So do we have another platform or something like that?
So at this point of time, we can't change the platform. If you can join from your mobile, it would be better.
Mobile. Let me check. I think I'm using the same network, so I don't know how it's going to be different on mobile.
So please continue, sir. Please continue with the session.
Yeah. So I was talking about the construction dispute. So basically, construction disputes happen after many years of completion of the project. During those periods, people move and the memory fades. So it is mostly, your dispute is mostly relied upon the documentation. So there must be a good documentation management from the very beginning. Like when you go to the tribunal, as I said, the people move and memory fades. The tribunal are more inclined to look into the document part. So if you fail to produce any document related to your particular claim, there is likelihood that the tribunal will take an adverse opinion. So the first point is document management. So from the very beginning, the document management should be very good. Either you use a software, there are many software in the market nowadays, because this is the trend that the documents are being managed online, on cloud, like automation documentation. But with automation documentation, if you are managing your documentation part, so you must be aware to look into the deletion part, because for example, in Google Drive, there is one automatic deletion option. So you must set it, like it doesn't delete after 30 months or 1 year or 2 years. You must set it for the maximum longer period. So your documentation is the important part in a construction dispute. Secondly, comes is language. Whenever you are negotiating the project with the project owner, try to draft your contract in your original language and then get it translated into another language which is used by other party, because the original language has always upper hand over the translated language. For example, most of the audience might be aware about the comma case. So it was a Canadian case. The agreement was first drafted in French language, that was the original language, and it was translated in English. So what happened in the termination clause, by mistake, one comma was misplaced at some other place in English language, which consequently gave the right to the party to terminate the contract without having a locking period. But in the original agreement, it was a locking period. Like for first 5 years, the contract must not be terminated. But just because of the project. So having when the court looked into the original contract that was in French language, then they understood the intention of the parties, which was mistakenly done in the translation. So always try to draft your contract and important document in your original language and then get it translated. So whenever you are producing your document, the court would be able to judge on your intention, the intention of the parties. So that is the second pointer when you are managing your construction dispute. Third comes is in-house lawyer. Every corporate has an in-house lawyer, but in construction, it is quite different. If you have a simple legal graduate or a lawyer, that won't be much helpful. Basically, when you hire an in-house lawyer for a construction company or construction corporation, you must focus on a person like who have both side of knowledge, like technical knowledge and the legal knowledge as well. So he would be in a better position to translate the technicalities into legal language whenever the dispute arises and whenever he is breaching the outside counsel. So having a dual qualified in-house lawyer is of much help. So whenever you are trying to hire an in-house lawyer, being a construction company or corporation, try to find out the person who has the legal knowledge as well as the technical knowledge. Next comes, like before you go to the arbitration process, try to sit with the other party and try to negotiate on the preliminary issues, like what all issues must be decided beforehand by the tribunal. For example, suppose the tribunal decides on all technical parts and submission of documents is closed, evidentiary process is closed, and then the tribunal takes the jurisdiction part. Hello?
Please continue, sir.
Hello? Yeah. And then the tribunal takes on the jurisdiction part, and during that process, the tribunal finds that doesn't have any jurisdiction at all. So your process of the previous process of all the technical part judging and evidentiary process is a loss. So these kind of issues, which doesn't include any technicalities, must be termed as a preliminary issue and should be judged beforehand. So it helps to fasten the process. Most important comes is, in my opinion, is expert evidence, because a construction dispute includes a lot of technicalities. So each party has their own experts, and even the tribunal appoints their own experts. So when deciding on the issue, every expert has their own opinion, and when presenting before the tribunal, they fight with each other, trying to reach a common ground. They argue and contradict the other experts. So it takes a long time. So to avoid the situation, what I would suggest, that when you appoint your expert, try to make them sit and chalk out what are the common grounds and what are the points of difference. So when this is done, they can prepare a common expert evidence on the common grounds, and they can prepare an individual report on the point of difference. That way, it make the process faster. It makes you free from fighting over the common ground as well, because it is already agreed that these are common grounds and experts have the similar opinion on that. So for that, you can prepare a common report, so it saves a cost as well. Besides, nowadays there is a tradition, not tradition, there is a practice of appointing arbitration consultant. It is a new concept and it is not in that much vogue. But what arbitration consultant does is a dual qualified person who has some experience in technical field and is also a legal qualified person. So he consults with the arbitrator. He doesn't have any decision making power, but he advised the expert, the tribunal on the technical part. He translates the technical part into legal language and helps the arbitrator to reach the particular point in a just manner. So, but the tribunal cannot have this consultant appointed by its own. For this, the party has to agree, because in arbitration, party autonomy is the most. If anything goes against party autonomy, so the parties can take that point and challenge the award in setting aside procedure, and courts are very much inclined to set aside the award when the procedure is not followed or when the party autonomy is violated, because the arbitration fulcrum is party autonomy, party's choice. So in our appointing arbitration consultant is really helpful, because it helps the arbitrator to reach a decision in a just manner and in an efficient manner. Apart from that, there are few concerns with regard to delay claim, like when the delay happens. So why that delay was there? This is the point of concern. The contractor says it was not my fault, it was the contractor's fault. And the owner says that I don't understand, because I gave you the contract. So whether it's a subcontractor's fault or not, it is your liability. So to decide on that point, it must be negotiated beforehand whether the concurrent delay is a matter of principle or matter of law. Because if it is a matter of principle, it can be decided as a preliminary issue. But if it is a matter of law, it will take time. So it should be during the trial process. So these are the few points which must be noted beforehand. These are not all points, because depending upon the nature and size of the construction dispute, you have to make your strategy accordingly. So these are the basic points which help make the process faster. Apart from this, there is one important point which I find in Indian market. Like every contractor has a very good relationship with the owner, because they need a repeat business. So they follow a good relationship. And due to that, they normally sway from the standard procedure, like giving notice. Suppose some incident happened and you need to notify the owner. So try to avoid the formal notification. They find it as hampering the relationship, and then try to avoid it. But that is not a good practice, because when the dispute will arise, the tribunal is going to look into the document part. They heavily rely on the documentation. So even though you have a very good relation with the owner of the project, try to follow the standard procedure as defined in the contract. You do not sway from the standard procedure, because in many countries, like mostly in civil law countries, the courts have an approach to reading the contract word by word. So the moment they find that you have strayed from the standard procedure defined in the contract, your case is gone. The tribunal may take an adverse opinion. So even if it's a small part and the standard requires that you must send a notice, send it through an email only. Doesn't matter. No need of sending through the post or something like that. In a message only, but send the notice. Nowadays, the WhatsApp messages are also accepted as a evidence. So always, whenever the step is required under the contract that you must intimate the owner, you should follow that. Never rely on your relationship. Then during considering the current situation, like this pandemic, COVID-19 has given like whether it's there is a, in many countries there is a argument going on whether it can be treated as a force majeure or not, because force majeure is a very wide arena, and depending upon the language of the draft, it can include or exclude COVID-19. So I would suggest that when this situation happens, try to connect with the owner of the project and try to chalk it out. If this scenario is not covered under force majeure, try to cover it in a new agreement. That would be innovation of that force majeure clause, and try to be in communication, because communication is very important. Always inform the owner what is the stage going on at the ground, what is the scenario at the ground, and be in communication. When you are in communication, the owner would understand. Normally, the rift happens when the owner is not updated, so he is worried what's going on the ground. So considering this COVID-19, try to revisit your force majeure clause, and if your force majeure clause doesn't have a provision that includes this pandemic, then I would suggest talk to the project owner and all the involved parties and get it included into force majeure clause, because still we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. So to conclude, with regard to the construction disputes, as I said in the beginning, documentation is the only important part. So try to document each and every step and try to maintain those documents as long as possible, because normally these disputes arise after very long from the completion of the project. So these are the basic pointers. It's not all, but these are the basic that helps to make construction arbitration faster and cheaper.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I would like to ask if can you please tell us about interim relief, including emergency arbitrators in construction arbitration?
Yeah, interim relief, it again depends upon your contract, how you have drafted your arbitration agreement. So normally interim reliefs are granted, but for that you have to convince the tribunal that this is the scenario, and that is after I'm talking about after the constitution of tribunal, but before that, even of this, as you said, emergency arbitration. So emergency arbitration is a concept that before start of the arbitration, you request the institution to constitute an emergency tribunal to decide upon some preliminary issues that I mentioned, that there must be some preliminary issue. So if you think that these are the issues which must be decided first, otherwise it is going to hamper the outcome of the dispute. So you have to convince the institution that these issues are important to maintain the status quo of the case, and then it is going to affect the outcome of the arbitration. In that scenario, the tribunal appoints an emergency arbitrator who decides on that particular issue only, and depending upon your documentation and your submission, they decide accordingly. So yes, you can apply for interim relief and emergency arbitration in construction disputes.
Thank you so much, sir. So, shall we begin with the next issue, or we should take the questions for this topic from the students who have mentioned in the chat box?
Yeah. If
So
they have
shall
a
we
question, I would like to take the question now.
So we have a question that won't the dispute arising due to difference in language lead to one party challenging the contract for misrepresentation by the other party?
Sorry, I didn't get the point. Could you please come again? Hello.
So the first question is that.
Could you please explain the question again?
So the first question is, won't the dispute arising due to difference in language lead to one party challenging the contract for misrepresentation by the other party?
So what is the meaning of due to the language change? I didn't get this point.
Sir,
what actually they want to ask?
Yes, you can ask your question.
Okay, so like sir, you had given the first example of the Canadian case that originally the contract was in French language, but then it was translated into English. So the Canadian party, which had gone by the English translation, and it was it had a mindset that we can exit before 5 years, right? So once they find out that that was not originally the case, obviously they cannot file a case under fraud, because that is not something that the other party had done knowingly, but it was a kind of mistake. So that could come under misrepresentation. Can the Canadian party challenge this particular contract into the court for misrepresentation, and can it be voidable on behalf of the Canadian party?
Mrityunjay sir, please unmute.
First of all, depending upon the dispute. Yes.
Please continue, sir.
Hello. You were saying something.
So I was saying you to continue. You was muted. So I was saying you to unmute yourself, sir. So you was unmuted early. You was muted earlier.
I'm not getting you. I'm not getting you again. Hello.
Yes, sir. Please continue with the session, sir.
Yeah. So first of all, depending upon your language of your arbitration clause, you can go to the court or to the arbitration tribunal. You said about the court, so it depends. If your dispute resolution clause talks about arbitration and the language is wide, like any dispute relating to or out of this contract shall be decided by the arbitration, then you cannot go to the court. You have to go to the arbitration only. Whatever the dispute relating to that contract has to be decided by the arbitration. With regard to the misrepresentation, either it is knowingly done or unknowingly done, it was a issue under translation. So yes, there is a slight chance that you can claim a misrepresentation, but that would not be like rate of success is very low. because it is not in the line of your original dispute, anyone can simply say. So where is the question of fraud or misrepresentation? So to conclude, yes, you can claim, but the rate of success is very low.
So our next question is,
Yeah.
in foreign countries, the legal system works in accordance with due process of law and not with procedure established by law. Therefore, in contract cases or in
Just a second,
cases of
Harshit. Just a
execution
second,
of
Harshit.
will,
Miss Nidhi Bansal, do you wish to speak anything?
A lot of voice coming simultaneously. I'm not able to hear. 2-3 questions are coming.
Please continue.
sir, our next question is, in foreign countries,
Actually, I didn't hear anything.
so I'm
Yeah.
repeating the question. In foreign countries, the legal system works in
Yes,
accordance with due process of law and not with procedure established by law. Therefore, in contract cases or in cases of execution of will, don't you think that courts look for the intention rather than going word by word?
It depends. As I told you, like civil countries have a procedure. They follow due process and the procedure established by law both, but the importance is given to the procedure established by the law. Like China, Indonesia, they are going to read the contract word by word and they are going to decide. There has been a case, I remember, I think it was a arbitration case only. I don't remember the name right now. The scenario was that the case went to SIAC, and then there is a provision: if your value of your dispute is less than some X amount, then it will be decided by a sole arbitrator in a fast track arbitration mode. And in the contract, they had a provision that the dispute shall be resolved by panel of 3 arbitrators. But since the value of the dispute was under the threshold of the rules of CEAT, they appointed a sole arbitrator and the matter was decided. And when the award holder went to China to execute the award, it was challenged on the ground that the process defined in the contract was not followed. And the court held that yes, it was not followed, and they rejected the enforcement. So normally there are countries, mostly civil law countries, they follow due process and procedure established by law both, but the procedure established by law are given more importance.
Thank you so much, sir. So now we will begin with our next topic, which is how to file an arbitration case.
Like the topic saving time and cost.
Yes, sir.
So in arbitration, as it started arbitration, the very basic value was it is going to be cheaper and faster. But over the time, everyone knows now that arbitration is not a cheap game. It is costly and it takes time, like time like 6 years, 7 years, even 10 years. So what went wrong and how the parties can save the time and the cost in their international arbitration? To that line, I would say that if you can control the time, the cost is under control. The time is of most important part in making the arbitration process efficient and cheap. There has been many surveys like 2 or 3 by CARB and ICC, that cast that the cost can be arbitration cost can be mainly divided into 2 categories. The first is the procedural cost, that is called arbitration cost. That includes the charges of arbitrator, the administrative fee of institution, facility fee, and etc. And then second comes the party cost. The party cost includes the lawyer's fee and other fees like securing the evidences, translation, stationery fee, and etc. So there are 2 heads. And as per the survey and the study conducted by ICC, it came to that 80% of the arbitration cost can be accounted to the party cost. It simply means that 80% of the arbitration cost goes towards the lawyer's fee and other fee related to the process like securing evidences, discoveries, translation, lodging, traveling. These all costs. These all costs. So it is, if you see into this scenario, so it is the fault of the party and the fault of the, basically there have been few cases when the party is both the parties are in agreement to resolve the dispute as soon as possible. Even a $1 trillion dispute can be resolved in a couple of months, but this is a very ideal situation which doesn't happen often. What happens when the dispute arises, and if the defendant doesn't have any strong defense with them, so they will try to delay the matter. And for that, they use many tactics like asking for extension of time, submitting document after closure of submission date, introducing new lawyer at a very at a date which is very near to the trial. So by using these tactics, they try to delay the matter. So what the party can do to save this is from like during the process of first conference with the tribunal, they can collaborate with the tribunal in chalking down the timetable and the procedure. Normally, every tribunal, along with the parties, decides a timetable, time frame for the disputes to be so for the process to be followed, and accordingly they pass a procedural order. They keep a buffer time. Normally, they foresee that what if the party is going to ask for time extension. So they keep buffer for these kind of scenarios. But if the defendant is of very like not inclined at all to resolve the dispute, they will use the tactics. And when they ask for the time extension, so what happens if it is not mutually agreed? If the time extension is mutually agreed, suppose the defendant asks for the time extension and the claimant agreed, so it is very easy for the tribunal to award the time extension. But if it is not mutually agreed, then it becomes difficult for the tribunal, because first they have to see what if they deny. Is it going to breach the principle of natural justice? And it's in favor of the claimant as well, because if it breaches the principle of natural justice, that can be a point for setting aside the award, final award. So it is not going to help the claimant as well. So first they have to look whether it is going to breach the principle of natural justice or not. If yes, then the tribunal is going to consider whether to grant the time or not, and how much to grant. Suppose the defendant asks for 1 month, so they are looking if the 1 month time is given, and if it is not within the buffer time which has been scheduled during the first conference in the procedural order, so whether it's going to have a snowballing effect or not. So what I mean by the snowballing effect is if the defendant is given extra time, then accordingly the claimant will ask, because obviously they are going to have some extra time as well. So it will keep continuing, and that will delay the whole process. So this is a very critical scenario for the arbitrator to decide upon, because first he has to look into whether he should not deny the chance to be heard to the defendant, and accordingly he has to maintain the procedure on time. So what normally they do is, if asked for 1 month, they give it 2 weeks time, because as per the natural justice, if the arbitrator is certified that the defendant has been given a reasonable time, so it is okay, because the principle of natural justice doesn't say that all the opportunity must. So that's the first scenario. So during that procedure, the setting of the timetable, both the parties can collaborate and talk to the arbitrator to set a procedure in a manner like no time extension shall be given unless and until there happens some exception scenario. No document should be submitted after the closure of the date, and if it is being submitted, then this is going to be the penalty. So, and with regard to the introduction of new lawyer, new representative, after some point of time in the process, like X point is concluded, like the document submission of the document is concluded and closed, then you cannot introduce a new representative to your case. So this way, they can define a very hard and fast timeline to keep the process on track. Then the next point to save time and cost is, as we discussed earlier, the jurisdictional issue. So it should be decided as a preliminary issue. Otherwise, if the whole process ends and then the tribunal finds that they doesn't have jurisdiction, so it is loss for both the parties. So to conclude, the first process during the procedural order, setting out the timetable and the timeline for the whole arbitration process, the party should be inclined to collaborate with the tribunal and to set a reasonable time frame where each party have a reasonable opportunity to be heard and present their matter. If not, so there is a no rescue. As I said, the whole cost is because of the client. It is not upon the tribunal or the institution. It is caused by the client. So if the client is not inclined to get the dispute resolved ASAP, then there is no rescue. So you have to convince the other party. So here the role of the lawyers, as I said, even the lawyers are the important, like equally responsible for this. Being a lawyer, we should convince our client, either he or she is claimant or defendant, the gravity of the dispute and the consequences out of it. So it's our duty to make them understand, not to delay. Anyway, even if they are delaying, it's causing the cost to increase, and at the end they are going to be like a lose anyway. So the cost will be double. So it's our duty to make them convince them to follow the timetable as decided by the tribunal. So to save the cost and time, first, beforehand, meet with your opponent, agree upon preliminary issues, collaborate with the tribunal, and set a timeline which must not be deviated. If this process is followed, even $1 trillion dispute can be resolved in a couple of months.
Thank you so much, sir. So now I would like to begin with our third issue, that is non-contractual claims in construction arbitration.
So we don't have any question on this?
No, sir.
Okay. So I'll proceed with the third topic, that is non-contractual claims in a commercial arbitration. So it is not a new concept. But before I come into this topic, I would like to remind that you might all be knowing that arbitration is a creature of contract. So what do you mean by creature of contract? So contract is between two private parties. So it normally, ordinarily relates to right in person and not right in rem. So in general, non-contractual claims in commercial arbitration are non-arbitrable. However, as the arbitration has got traction, and the many jurisdictions like UK, Singapore, India are becoming pro-arbitration, so the jurisdictions are considering these matters to be arbitrated. But there are three factors to be considered when a non-contractual claims in a commercial arbitration are claimed. So it depends on three factors. First is the language of your dispute resolution clause, whether it includes those disputes or not. The second is the proximity of the non-contractual claim. And the third is the approach of the jurisdiction. So approach is the jurisdiction is like I said, UK has a pro-arbitration approach. Singapore has a pro-arbitration approach. Even India has a pro-arbitration approach. To that point, I would like to quote few cases. Like there was a Bougainville case. In this case, Delhi High Court said that if the agreement would have a detailed provision as to the breach of contract and its consequences on both the parties, then the arbitration tribunal would have the jurisdiction. It simply means that if your arbitration clause is sketchy and not in detail, even the countries are pro-arbitration, they cannot help it. In this case, the clause was any dispute or differences shall be arbitrated, shall be resolved by arbitration under so and so. So it talks about any dispute and any differences between whom? With regard to this contract or in relation to this contract or for some specific dispute in relation to this contract. So it was not specified at all. Moreover, the entire agreement was not in detail. So the court find that in this scenario, the non-contractual claim cannot be arbitrated because the agreement doesn't say so. But if it is provided in the agreement, they have the right. Like in further, the other case is Krishna Gopal and Praveen Rajput case. Again, Delhi High Court said that the tribunal has all the power of a civil court, even to award any kind of injunction and damages if the case is made. So what do you mean by the case is made? So simply, if your dispute relates and comes under the arbitration clause and you prove it, then the tribunal has the power to arbitrate it and decide upon it. So basically, the language plays an important part. So if your language is any dispute out of this contract or in relation to this contract shall be resolved by arbitration. So this language is a very wide and simply includes even non-contractual claims. So if this kind of language is used, you can claim your non-contractual claims under arbitration clause and you can get it arbitrated. And to that effect, there was a very interesting case by English Commercial Court that was Dremur and versus Eurochamp. You can refer to that case. That's a very interesting one. So the language plays important part. However,
Sir, can you please repeat the name of the case?
It's a Dremur, D-R-E-Y-M-O-O-R, Dremur Fertilizers versus Eurochamp. It was decided in 2018 by English Commercial Court. So I was saying, however, even if the language of your clause is like it excludes the non-contractual claims to be arbitrated, then even though that claims can be arbitrated depending upon the proximity. So proximity, if your proximity of the non-contractual claims are so close to the contractual claims, that is to say that it is based upon the same fact and it comes out of the same transaction, then its proximity is very close. In that scenario, even the arbitration clause doesn't talk about non-contractual claims, but it can be arbitrated. And the purpose of this is to avoid the multiplicity of dispute resolution clause. So to this effect, there is a one case, very like recent case. It's Microsoft and versus Samsung case. So in this case, Microsoft, like what was done by the Microsoft, that they have a contract and there was a provision for arbitration. So Microsoft, in order to avoid the arbitration, went directly to the court claiming non-contractual claims. When Samsung objected to that, like they claimed before the court that the matter should be sent to arbitration because we have an arbitration agreement. Then Microsoft said that we are not claiming any contractual claims; these are non-contractual claims, and these claims do not fall under the arbitration clause. But the English court found that even though the contractual claims are not made or not argued, it doesn't matter, because if it is so, then the claimant would have an opportunity to avoid the arbitration. So far your non-contractual claims are in proximity with the contractual claims. It must go to the forum which has been chosen by the party, and in this Microsoft case, it was the arbitration. So the court stayed the dispute in the court and asked the parties to go to the arbitration to resolve the dispute. So yes, non-contractual claims in nowadays, even in investment disputes, can be claimed under contractual claims depending upon three factors where you are claiming those claims. If whether the jurisdiction is pro arbitration or not. If they are not pro arbitration, it would be hard to prove. Then second, your language of your dispute resolution clause, whether the language of the dispute resolution clause is wide enough to include the non-contractual claims or not. If not, then it would be hard, specifically in civil law country. As I said, they read the contract as it is. They are not like English court. They are so pro arbitration and follow due process. And then third is the proximity. If your forum would like to avoid the multiplicity of dispute resolution process, and they will ask you to go to the chosen forum. So these are the three factors when you are claiming non-contractual claims under commercial arbitration.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, can you tell us the allocation of risk in construction contracts?
Allocation of
risk in construction contract.
Allocation
Yes,
of risks. Okay, it's a very interesting topic, and it's an entire subject in it. Like I studied it under the project mega project delivery. So normally, what happens when you are bidding for a contract? So owner have a mentality to put away all the risks to the contractor. They don't want to take any risk, so they have that mentality. And the contractor, they want to have the contract, and they do not look up to those risks generally, and they accept it. And that is why most of the mega projects fails, because the risk is allocated without understanding the capacity of the parties. So in this scenario, what I would like to suggest that before initiating the tendering process or awarding the contract, the owner should get a study done, should be with whom. That is called front loading. Normally owner avoid these kind of scenario, because it involves not a lot, includes a cost that is more than the general process. So they try to avoid the front loading. So front loading is one of the important part of behind the success of the project. So during that process, you study each and every risk, and accordingly it is allocated. So the front loading is important. And from the contractor point of view, if you are going to have a contract, just do not rush for it. You have to study the risk. Suppose if there is a risk allocated with designing, and that the designing part, architectural part is with the owner. So why are you going to agree on this? Because it's not under your purview. Your part is the construction part, the technical part, not the drawing part, not the architectural part. So if it is not your specific duty, you should not be to it. But normally it doesn't happen. As I said, contractors are like willing to take the contract even without going through the risk, because they want the contract. And all those, the risk should be with the owner, not with the contractor. With regard to architectural design, the risk should be architecture, not with the contractor. With regard to the construction and the material, use of material, it should be with the contractor, not with the architecture and the owner. So accordingly, you have to allocate the risk. Yes.
If you want to ask any questions in the session, please write it in the chat box. And if you want to unmute yourself, then you have to take permission in chat box first. Then only you can unmute yourself. Do we have any questions?
Was this clear? Like the risk part?
Yes, sir.
So could you please repeat the case names?
Which one?
All the case names, sir. The name of cases you discussed.
Oh, okay. Okay. One was Bougainville case. I think it is let me check. Just
Sir, should you please write the name of the case in chat box?
the second case which I quoted was Krishan Gopal versus Parvar for this one. But I have a case number CS OS in bracket 523/2018. And the other one was DREYMOOR fertilizers versus Eurochan, EUROCHAM. And then the last one was Mike versus Samsung. It was in 2017. It involved Microsoft, Nokia 1 and Nokia 2. I think there were 3 parties in the claimant side.
So we are done with the question and answer round. So
Are we done?
yes, sir, can we end the session now, sir?
Just a minute. Somebody is asking me to write the case name in the chat box.
Arshvi, are you writing the name of case?
It's a BOU.
Actually, I'm unable to hear, sir.
The first one is Bougainville. UGAINVILLEA. (2008) DMT 687. Krishan Gopal versus (2018). That one is the no fertilizers versus Eurochannel by English Commercial Court. And one is Microsoft versus yeah.
So we are done with all the 3 topics. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session.
Is there any further question? My apologies, because I think it was too much break from my side. I can understand that.
Can you please repeat what was the judgment of this case?
Which one?
The Bougainvillea case.
In Bougainville case, the Delhi High Court said that if the contract would have a detailed provision as to the consequences of breach of contract on both the parties, then the arbitrator would have jurisdiction. So in nutshell, the dispute resolution clause was not so clear or so detailed. It was sketchy and vague.
So we are done with this session. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session. You have discussed the topics which are not very common in India, and it is known to very less people, like what is construction arbitration. A lot of people are not known of these topics. Thank you so much for this wonderful session and enlightening us about these topics. Now we can end this session. Please stop the recording. Arshvi, can you please stop the recording now?